Hey team, Jen here. I'm making this video today to talk to you a little bit about how to conduct research well when you're sitting down to write an academic essay in which you want to use sources, secondary sources. Researching is a really pleasurable act for many of us because it gives us the opportunity to extend beyond what might be common knowledge and to really investigate and probe deeply into issues that are more complex and interesting. Research can lead you to really fantastic places. I love research. Research is really the backbone of what we do in academia. So as you start your research, try to keep in mind um, the possibilities that research can bring for your research that are really pretty awesome. I mean, research really opens a lot of doors and it helps to educate you as well about things that you didn't know. So I love research, and I hope that as time goes on in the course and as you continue in your academic journeys, that you can also come to enjoy research a lot. There's a lot of stigma that surrounds research, however. So I want to take you through a step-by-step process that can help you to approach research in a way that's going to be really useful for you. First of all, where do you start with research? I always suggest that when you sit down to write an academic paper, you always have to have a context in mind, at least one. Perhaps you'll have several contexts in mind. In this course, we focus a lot on contextualization. Um, I made a video about context and a quick overview on context. But context is really important. It is the thing that distinguishes your work from every other work. It's the way that you approach the essay. It's the topic of the essay, but it's very narrow and specific. So you want to make sure that you have at least one extremely refined, unique, dead sexy context before you ever sit down to conduct research. Context will give you a place to start. And I do recommend that you begin your research by researching the context rather than the primary texts that you're going to do. I think that if you start by researching the text, let's say you're going to write an essay on Huckleberry Finn. If you sit down and you go to the library and you research what people have written about Huckleberry Finn, well, there's a whole lot that's been written about Huckleberry Finn, and you're going to find yourself knee deep in a pile of articles about the text that they're already coming forth with new and interesting ideas. And a lot of students can feel actually bogged down by all of those creative ideas. They can feel really inspired by them, and it can really direct their path. They'll say, well, I want to make that same argument, or they could feel discouraged from that. I'd never ever suggest students start researching the text. It's almost like a dead end street. I recommend that you research your primary text as a last step along your line of research. That'll give you a chance to see what scholars have already said and some of the questions that they pose. Um, it should be the last step, you know, most times. There are always exceptions to this rule. So start by researching your context. That is really integral. Um, the second thing that you want to decide is what kind of information is going to help you to develop your line of inquiry. Now, every line of inquiry is the same and different at the same time. Every line of inquiry in the academic genre has a lot of similarities because it is in the academic genre. So you're looking for the key moves along the line of inquiry. On the other hand, every line of inquiry is also unique because we value different things. We all value different things as academic writers. Some of us, for example, might value cultural perspective or personal perspective more than, literary constructs. There's always a certain value system that comes with every writer. So when you sit down to think about how you're going to begin your research, think about what kind of information is going to help you to develop that line of inquiry to the best of your ability. Now, in the academic genre, you know straight off that scholarly sources are going to be pretty key because in this genre, scholars are reading it and scholars value other scholars' perspectives. That's just the way that it goes. But that's not the only kind of sources that can work in this genre. There are many kind of sources that can work. Popularization articles can work, films, interviews, personal experience, cultural artifacts, music. I mean, the list can go on forever. So think about what kind of sources will be most useful for you and for your particular value system when you approach this paper. I think that starting with the scholarly research is a good place to start because scholarly research is multifaceted. There's a lot of appeal in scholarly articles. Uh, some, most, not all. There's a lot of things going on in these articles that can pull in a lot of different contexts and perspectives. So starting with the scholarly can oftentimes open up more doors for you. So I do recommend starting with the scholarly. Okay, once you've decided that, sit down at your library or at your computer where you can access your library, and you want to do a keyword search in a database that makes sense for the kind of research that you're trying to do. Now, in the humanities, there are several databases that are always shoo-ins. That is JSTOR and Project Muse. Those are the places that I always begin my research because these databases subscribe to peer-reviewed journals that are in our discipline of the humanities, broadly speaking. There are many other databases that you can use, and you can oftentimes just do a quick search in the library homepage that can take you to other databases or other resources that are in the humanities. But I would say start with Project Muse and JSTOR if you have those in your library, which you probably do. When you're in those databases, the next step is to do a keyword search. Now, this can be really thrilling and it can also be pretty daunting. How do you select keywords? Well, that depends a lot on your context. That's why it's so important for you to have a clear context or several contexts in mind for possibilities for your paper. Keyword searching is really an art form, and I'm going to give you a couple tips here that can help you to keyword search well. The first thing you want to do is just jot down some terms that are related to your context of interest. So you might do like a bubbling, a branching off of the term, a free association exercise, whatever you need to do. Think about words that are related to your context, um, feelings that your context evokes, um, connections between your context and related things. Think about all the different terminology that you could use to describe your context to somebody and write those keywords down on a piece of paper. Now, when you sit down, you should have probably like 10 words. That's a good place to start. When you type in the keywords into your search engine, you can combine them in any way that you want. So if you're doing Huckleberry Finn, which is a novel I haven't read in a really long time, so I'm just gonna think about some keywords here. You could type in Southern, you know, race and literature, or some combination like that to bring out a context that you're interested in exploring. Um, and you want to keep trying a lot of those combinations. Now, in a lot of these databases, you can do advanced searches where you can narrow down your search to articles from certain dates or certain periods or certain, in certain veins. There are all different kinds of ways you can narrow it down. But if you're new to research, just start with keywords and try to experiment with that. Try to narrow your selections down through really pinpointing the kind of language that is going to get you the results that you want. Once those results appear, take time and skim the titles. Look at the titles of the articles and click on titles that look really fresh and interesting and relevant for you. Once you click on something that looks good, take a look at the abstract. The abstract will give you a general overview of the article, although not every article will have an abstract. So if your article does not have an abstract, then scroll down, give it a quick skim, see if anything stands out to you. Another point I have as you do your keyword searching is when you do find an article that looks pretty good, look at what their keywords are. A lot of times the keywords will be printed right in the beginning, the keywords for the article. If you think that some of those keywords can apply to your project, write them down on your list and continue with that. Another thing that you can do, if you find an article that is just perfect for you, I suggest that you scroll down to their works cited page. On that works cited page, they will list off the sources that they used to develop their line of inquiry. And a lot of times you might want to look at those sources and see where those sources can lead you. So when you find an article that fits, really use it to your advantage, because that article can really help to advance you to the next step. You can look at some of their source material and use that as a springboard too. So that's a great bit of advice for conducting research on this primary kind of keyword oriented level. The next thing you want to do after you've gone through the library and you've gotten some sources together, you want to look at some unlikely resources. You can go beyond the library, or maybe in the library look at, some sciences databases, or some databases in pop culture, or some databases in fine arts, or whatever. Kind of swirl around a little bit outside of the humanities and see what kind of connections you can make. I like to then just hit the web, the interwebs, and I like to look for rare texts. I like to go to Amazon Books or Google Books, and I like to do keyword searches there and see what I can get in terms of looking for antiquated texts that might be useful to my line of inquiry. I also like to go to great websites like Voice of the Shuttle, or general search engines like that, where you can, or Ubu Web, things like this, where you can get unlikely resources that can actually really enhance your line of inquiry in places that you might not usually think of. One way to do this is to type your keywords into a Google search and see what kind of resources you get. It's great. Now, there are some resources that excuse me, will not be scholarly, that you'll have a question, well, should I use this in my essay? Does it have a place among these scholarly resources? And the answer to that is, it really depends on your line of inquiry. For example, Wikipedia is almost always not a good source to use in an essay. However, because it's a resource that's constantly changing. Its integrity, its credibility is always questionable, because the masses write the entries. So if you click on Wikipedia entry month after month, you'll notice that it's constantly evolving. So it's not a resource that is, it's not very credible. On the other hand, you might want to use Wikipedia because you're writing an essay about the way that definitions change through time, or the way that we understand a certain idea changes depending on how people confront that. Wikipedia would be probably the top resource you would want to use if you were doing that kind of cultural study. So think about what kind of resources will and will not work for you. I hope that's helpful. Research is why I do what I do. It's one of the top reasons. I love research, and if I can help you in any way to research better, please let me know. But I hope that these quick tips are going to help you get started.